One thing I would tell people is be very strategic about the search that you get. Because, I've interviewed people and they have 50 certifications in cyber. And then you start talking to them and you run them through scenarios and they can't answer any of the questions. You got to put yourself out there. I would also advise people to engage in the cybersecurity community. There's a lot of events, free events. Hey, it may cost you $100 to buy a ticket, but, go in there, network. You never know who you'll meet. You never know who will take a chance on you. Find out what's going on in your local area from a cybersecurity standpoint. And, you can volunteer and you never know who you're going to meet. It might not even be somebody seeing you. You just might connect with somebody and they may say, hey, I know this person that you need to talk to. It might not be me, but it might be 2-3 layers down of someone that I know that might give you an opportunity that you're looking for.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Custom Journeys podcast. My name is Andrew Baines. I'm the host of the show, and we're doing another episode from Atlanta. I'm very excited to be sitting down with Dante Jackson. He is a cybersecurity leader at Truist. Actually has 2 different titles at the company. Let me make sure I get it right. Head of Security Resilience, and then also head of Insider Threat. So we're going to learn about what exactly that means, what he does in his day job, how he kind of got to this point in his career, and then also give you guys some advice in terms of getting into cybersecurity and then progressing your career and getting in leadership. So excited to be sitting down with you, man. How you doing today, Dante?
I'm doing well, Drew. It's good to meet you. I'm glad we finally got a chance to get together.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I said, I was in town for NSB, National Society of Black Engineers Conference, and I tried to hit up as many Atlanta people as I could and be like, yo, let's sit down and have a conversation. So I'm grateful that you made time to sit down with me today. Man, I already kind of asked you before off camera, but on camera, what's the deal with the 2 different job titles, man? You got you working twice as hard for the same amount of pay. What's the deal with the 2 different
So it's
roles?
funny, we talked about it, right? But now that you say it just now, it makes some sense. So I was formerly head of Insider Threat. So now my new role is head of cybersecurity resiliency. So, but it's kind of funny because they're separate but interrelated. So there's a lot of different areas because of my role that I touch within corporate cybersecurity, but I built out the Insider Threat program for Truist. So that's why you see those 2 different multiple titles layered under. And then you might also see Senior VP, as we talked about, and that's just because that's the bank title. So at the bank, you have a bank title, which is the VP, Senior VP, and then you have your actual business title, which for mine is the head of cybersecurity resiliency.
That's impressive. What's like, just in terms of like hierarchy, are there any more steps to go? Like what's next, like CIO or CISO?
So the CISO, right? So within corporate cybersecurity, the CISO is kind of like the next step. He oversees and manages all levels within corporate cybersecurity. So obviously, a CISO for one of the top 10 banks in the U.S. Requires quite a bit of experience. So, maybe one day, but not anytime in my near future, at least at Truist.
Okay, gotcha. So real quick, for the people that don't know Truist, I know y'all got the sponsor. Y'all sponsor the stadium down the street,
Correct.
For one, but just so people can kind of know it's a bank, I guess, and like
yeah. So what happened? We went through the largest bank merger in U.S. history. So SunTrust and BB&T, those 2 banks merged. 2 kind of regional Southeast banks. They merged to form Truist, which at that time was the 6th largest bank. So it kind of fluctuates depending on what side you're looking at. They could be the 6th, 7th, 8th. So I just typically tell people it's a top 10. But yeah, we'll sponsor the Atlanta Braves Stadium. So Truist Stadium is the Brave Stadium.
Yeah, I saw that on my way into the studio today, and I was like, okay, I got to make sure I ask you about that. So that's pretty cool. And then just to kind of give some more details. Head of Resilience, Insider Resilience?
Yeah, cybersecurity resilience.
Cybersecurity resilience.
You're trying to give me like a whole new job, or don't give me any more jobs.
I'm trying to give you some more work to do, man. And we even got to the one listed on your shirt too. So you got like 3 jobs.
Right.
But what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so the easiest way to I describe it to people is think of in terms of if the bank were attacked, how would the bank handle it from a cybersecurity standpoint? That's just the easiest way to describe it because there's so many different pillars and verticals associated with resiliency. But at the end of the day, it's really how would the bank handle an attack, right? So my job is to kind of look at different levels of, applications, right? What do we have as backups? TTX exercises. There's a lot of different components to resiliency, and it's kind of that and AI are kind of the 2 hot things right now that you're hearing in the market from a cybersecurity standpoint. You're hearing a lot of businesses saying, hey, we need to stand up a resiliency program because there are so many ongoing attacks and attempted attacks right now.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do want to talk about the AI piece. I was actually having a conversation yesterday with somebody at like a happy hour, and I think he's like a principal at Deloitte over like cybersecurity. And he was telling me that, like, so I guess he focused on like the medical industry. He was saying sometimes the conversations can be kind of challenging with like other leaders and organizations to try to convince them like you need to invest here because they're looking at like the return on investment. Like, okay, hey, do I want to spend millions of dollars on a cybersecurity resilience piece to prevent a breach that may cost me 50 million, or do I just want to put like 500K aside to try to cover or do like the bare bones and hope and pray that like things don't go wrong? Like in your experience, like not necessarily specifically to Truist, but do you see like people really investing in cybersecurity in 2024, or are they still kind of hesitant and looking at like, I don't want to, I could use that money for something else, because it's more of a defense thing, right?
100%. So think of it as like car insurance, right? Or
Yeah.
home insurance. Like you really don't see that return on investment until you need it. So people don't want to put a lot of money into cybersecurity until they get popped, right? Until an incident happens, that's when you see all hands on deck. We need to do these things. We need to spend all this money to get things up and going to protect ourselves. But that usually doesn't happen until something bad happens, right? And by that time, something bad has happened. So you're either trying to recover data, you're trying to pay ransomware, you're trying to do something to get your data back, or you're suffering that reputational damage. So, it really depends on the company, right? Like, what do you have as your priority? Because nobody wants to be on the news, right? Nobody wants to be saying, hey, like, 20,000 customers, we just lost your credit card number, your addresses, we were subject to ransomware. How do you deal with that? Because the reputational damage is something that's very hard to recover from.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I remember when this might have been like somewhere between 2014, 2017. I remember one of the credit bureaus had a data breach. I'm like, how y'all have everybody's everything? Like y'all are the one people that can't afford to have a data breach. So it's just interesting to see like some of these different scenarios and like, okay, what are people actually doing to implement to like make sure that doesn't actually happen?
Yeah, I mean, and everything he told you was true, based on just limited information he just gave. I mean, that's the hardest part, right? Convincing people that you really need to invest in this because you could be next. Because these bad actors they don't care. They just want data, right? It doesn't matter where it comes from, the medical industry, attorneys' offices, the government. I mean, they just want data. I mean, because whatever data they can sell and put on the dark web, I mean, you have natural bad actors that are just acting independently, and then you have state-sponsored bad actors that are acting on behalf of governments. And if it's on behalf of governments, they just want anything they can get their hands on.
Good point, man. That's interesting, man. So okay, good stuff. You mentioned AI, as another like hot area right now that's really kind of taken off. I'm hearing a lot of things. I use AI each and every day, whether it's ChatGPT or Grammarly or whatever, because like I hate writing.
Sure.
So I'm like, I need something to start with.
Sure.
And I have been trying to look and see more of like how is AI like impacting from like a cybersecurity standpoint. Like I know we have like a lot of deep fakes and like voice cloning. So I see from like a negative standpoint, like how AI is like making the bad actors even better at their job. But from like a positive standpoint, are there any like developments that you've kind of seen like in terms of how AI is improving cybersecurity?
Yeah, so the way you described it, this is the way I describe AI. It's great right now for tasks.
Yeah.
Right? So like, hey, sending that email, trying to get things done that used to take a lot of time, you can really condense that time down.
Yeah.
I'll give you a perfect example. Reviews, right? Like employee reviews. Like those things used to take, or even self-assessments, those things used to take 4 or 5 days to do, right? Now you can put in bullet points into ChatGPT, say, hey, write me a self-assessment or a review, and boom, it's spit out in a matter of seconds. I mean, so think about the amount of time that has saved you so that you can focus on other tasks. But I think there's also a component of it too that's very interesting and fascinating as to where it's going, because bad actors are leveraging AI technology to enhance their skill set and make it very very challenging to detect what they're doing, right? So we see this with phishing emails. I mean, these phishing emails have gotten so good.
Yeah.
I mean, they are so good, right? Like it is very difficult to differentiate between a false phishing attempt, a real phishing attempt via a false email, or a real email, and it's tricking people, right? And there's layers to this, and I try to explain to people that, so for example, and just use Truist for example, Bill Rogers, who's our CEO, a bad actor, they're not going to spend a lot of time trying to go after Bill Rogers, right? He's so layered away. But his secretary, right, his admin, right, the people that are 2-3 layers down, those are the people they want to get to, because from there, they can work their way into getting to Bill Rogers, right? I mean, if you can get to the person that's booking his hotels, booking his travel, paying his bills, or checking his emails, right? Sending out emails for him on his LinkedIn, controlling his social media, that's the person you want to try to get to the man himself.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I mean, a lot of times the secretary or the admin, they got the keys to the castle. Like they're the ones that are, like you said, they got access to the credit card information. They got access to like the hotel stuff, all of that?
The future of AI is just fascinating to me, and it's another buzzword in the industry right now. AI,
Yeah.
AI. You're hearing that a lot of AI. But with respect to banking, what you're also seeing is a lot of industries are nervous about it, or they aren't using it at all. Like, so in certain industries, you aren't allowed to use it at all because of the way it's set up, right? So when you go into ChatGPT or you go into any of these AI applications and you're putting information in there, it's saving that information, right? So you have to be very careful about non-proprietary information, things of that nature, to ensure that you're not putting the company secrets in there, right? You don't want to put, the formula to Coke in ChatGPT, right? And then it's there. So that's why it's scared off quite a few companies. But there's companies that are looking to kind of build firewalls, if you will, so that industries such as banking won't be as afraid to leverage the AI technology, because it's powerful and it's interesting where it's going to go in the next 5-10 years. I mean, combined with quantum computing and some of the things we're seeing.
Yeah, it's an interesting time we're in, man, where it's like, all the things that from those little technology movies, even like Back to the Future and all that type of stuff, like that technology. We're not doing time travel yet. I mean, that'd be amazing. But like all those things that like we dreamed of and made movies about, like we're starting to see some of that stuff play out.
Still waiting on the flying cars, but maybe
I don't think, and I was watching somebody, they were saying like he doesn't think we'll get flying cars. It'll probably just be helicopters, because that's what a helicopter kind of does.
Well, so many levels to that, right? I mean, an accident, you're done, right? I mean, what are you gonna have, like parachutes?
Exactly.
You're driving to you're flying to Publix to go get some groceries, and then somebody crashes into you.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the whole thing. Like a car hitting Publix is one thing, but a flying car hitting it, you got like
imagine the insurance on that. It's not real forgiving, man.
Not at all. Not at all. It's gonna be some high deductibles, So.
Yeah.
But that's I mean, I like the AI conversation. I think there's a lot of stuff going on there, and I think so. The phishing campaigns, I've definitely seen some creative ones. Both they'll hit me up in like my work email, and then also in my personal email. So I think people, even when you're away from work, I think you still kind of have to be like defense minded. And we were kind of talking about earlier, like back in the 90s and the early 2000s, like some of the like email campaigns we would get in Yahoo, where it's like, hey, I've been in a car accident. I'm your third cousin twice removed. I need you to send me a check. And like some people actually fell for it. So I mean,
a lot of people fell for it.
They've gotten like more sophisticated nowadays. And I get some emails now in my work email where it's like, hey, we're doing like a employee enrollment for your benefits package. Click this link here to register. And it looks a little clean and everything. And then the ones I've gotten the worst will actually be like company email address. And so it's coming from like, it looks like a company email. It has the right domain and everything, but then it'll be like different information. It's like you just send your antennas up, and sometimes I guess what's happening is like people's emails get compromised, and somebody's sending an email on their behalf to the rest of the team. So it's all kinds of stuff that I've just like over time gotten like cautious of and everything.
Yeah, I mean it's tricky.
Yeah,
I mean Drew's really, really tricky. I mean they're getting really good. So back in the day, like the original scam emails, typically the grammar was off, something was off, where you would read it and you'd be like, something's a little, for people who were computer literate, right? So elderly people who weren't really used to doing like a lot of online activity, they could kind of get tricked, and that's who sadly were some of the real victims, right? Losing some of their life savings, but. Those days, with ChatGPT, you can make an email look really clean now, right? So if you're a foreigner attempting to run a scam, with some of those grammar issues that would occur that would kind of trigger in someone's mind, like something's off about this email, the prince and I got a relative that's coming. But now with ChatGPT and some of these other AI applications out there, it can really clean up some of the grammar issues that would trigger those your spidey sense going off, if you will.
Yeah, I'm not to stay on the ChatGPT too long, but I did see that they have like a product where it's like essentially it's for businesses where they're saying, hey, we're not going to use the information you put in to train our AI model. That was another concern. But do you see companies using that in the future, or do you think that it might need to be like a completely separate, or maybe even develop your own like in-house AI model? What do you kind of see there?
That'll be it. That's the hindrance right now with AI, is the training model, because the information is not always accurate. Because what we're even seeing now with bad actors is they're feeding bad information into some of the models, right, in an attempt to kind of break them and throw it off. So that's something that a lot of state-sponsored, nation bad actors are doing, are feeding this bad information into some of these models so that they can take advantage of it, right, and really kind of see how far they can test to break the AI. So it'll be interesting to see like where it goes, because that's kind of the issue right now when it comes to some of the AIs, some of the information it has. It's just you just can't. It's not good data, right? I mean, the data integrity is in question.
Okay, gotcha. What do you think is the what are some of like the most surprising like data breaches that you've kind of seen?
It's funny. Nothing surprising anymore, because we've seen it at all levels. I think
Yeah.
anytime you see like the government getting breached, I think that's always like, so Fulton County just had a really bad data breach
Oh,
that
wow.
really shut the city. I mean, it was a real problem. They're still trying to work through the cleanup right now.
Yeah.
But when you have government agencies getting infiltrated, right, or being breached or ransomware and their data is being held, it really brings the city or the country to a halt, right? I mean, we have attacks on our energy grids. I mean, there's all kind of, anytime something big happens now, like with the AT&T, Verizon recently, the cell service went down. There was
Yeah.
questions about, hey, was that an attack, right? Was that a organic just failure? Did an engineer mess something up?
Mhm.
I can't say that there's been a specific attack that I've been like, oh wow, but some of the bigger attack, Equifax. I mean, some of the, the government agencies when they get, hit, you're just kind of like, man, this could be really bad if, things aren't handled properly, or even like the energy grid. I mean, those are things
Yeah.
that kind of keep me up at night, or more about like our day-to-day things shutting down our day-to-day operations that could really hurt the country, right? From a financial standpoint and the
Yeah.
economy.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, from a financial standpoint, even from like a healthcare standpoint, I'm like, if they can attack the energy grid, and got how many hospitals, especially in Houston, we have like the biggest medical center in the world, and it's like, what do you do then in that scenario? So unfortunate. Man, I thought I had.
Imagine if someone attacks the energy grid and shuts off power in the hospitals, right? And
Yeah.
in rooms where doctors are performing surgery, where people are on, devices trying to sustain life, or people are delivering babies. I mean,
Yeah.
it can be bad.
Yeah. Hey, so you mentioned ransomware. I did have one question about that real quick. Like, well, I guess with any of these breaches, like the data's gone, like, right? Like, even if somebody were to pay so ransomware, maybe if you can break down, okay, real quick, what is ransomware? But then I'm interested specifically, like, whether somebody pays the ransom or not, isn't the data already compromised?
Yeah, so I mean, at its basic level, I mean, you'll have a bad actor infiltrate, right? Be able to gain access to your network, and then be able to seize the data or either freeze the data, right?
Yeah.
So, and they have the key, right? So they basically say to you, hey, we have your data held hostage. We have the key. Pay $1 million, $100,000, whatever that fee may be, and you can have your data back. So yeah, you raise a good point, right? The data's gone. Are they holding the data? They may promise to give you we're going to give you the data back. Do they still maintain a copy? I mean, those are all things as to why you have to
Yeah.
be vigilant when it comes to cybersecurity. But there's applications out here now that back up your data, right? There's a lot of big companies out there that basically have software solutions that they're selling to big organizations, enterprises, even small to medium-sized businesses that essentially kind of make ransomware softens the blow. So
Yeah.
if you come and you're a bad actor, you hit a company with ransomware and they have a solution, they could easily
Yeah.
restore their data right back to the point to where it was frozen. And then you have to make that decision of like, why am I going to pay you? I mean, we're still up, because that's the issue, right? Your business is being held hostage because you can't access your data. But if you can get back to the point to where you were before the attack happened and it's business as usual, then you just have a decision to make with respect to, okay, well, is my data going on the dark web? Do I have to worry about
Yeah.
customer data being sold? Again, the reputational damage is just going to be on the news. Are you going to have a group going out saying, hey, we hit company X, and guess what? Their data's on the dark web because they didn't want to pay us? Because remember, they're kind of controlling the narrative at that point, right? I mean, you can't really, you have to be very careful as a business what you're putting out there.
Yeah. No, man, I appreciate you breaking that down. It's like a rabbit hole, and it's interesting. And so at your job at Truist, you're kind of helping to define you're defining the strategy, the process, securing the data and what to do in different scenarios and things that happen. But you also have a different logo on your shirt, Circuit Tech Security.
Yeah,
What is that about?
So this is my company that we currently have, a brand new startup company. And, we're taking a different approach. So again, still at Truist, been blessed that they're allowing me to kind of pursue this separate business endeavor. But it's a cybersecurity consulting company, and just kind of being in the industry for a while now, I've seen some of the weaknesses and some of the strengths of what some of these businesses have. And again, there's a portion of it that's convincing a company to take that next step to invest in corporate cybersecurity. But we're following a different model. So a lot of times what you'll see is consulting companies, they'll try to go from the inside out. Right? But we're going from the outside in. We're showing companies through pen testing and other capabilities of, hey, here are your vulnerabilities. This is how we can get in. And then once we're in, it's like, okay, let's assess and look at, let's do a threat vulnerability assessment. Let's see where you're vulnerable once we're in. And I think that's our differentiator. We have some AI experts on the team that also separates us from a lot of these consulting companies out there. And again, you have the big four, the Deloittes, the EYs, they come in, and we're trying to compete with them at a lower level, right, with respect to pricing. So like a lot of what we're seeing is a lot of medium-sized businesses, they want to get the cybersecurity help, but the cost. And, we want to offer something that's affordable, right, to some of these companies, so that they're not scared to take that next step, right? And they're like, yeah, okay, we can afford that. That's something that we can do to kind of make sure that we have the cyber defense capabilities that are required to protect everyone's data, because this helps everybody, right? I mean, if you go shop at Target had a breach, right? Next thing you know, they're getting your account information, they're getting your address. So,
yes.
It's not just about the company itself, it's about protecting the community.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I mean, I didn't even think about that. But even like, I guess if somebody goes to one of your ATMs, that whether they're a truest customer or not, they could probably use an ATM, get money out of it, and you got your card information that goes into that. So I mean, all of that kind of, it's a lot bigger than I think we originally think of. And so from a like value proposition, you're competing more competitive price compared to like the Deloittes, and then also the different strategy you're outside in terms of like pen testing. What's the typical, I guess, model if you're going outside in?
Yeah. So
what is the other model
as compared to like competition?
Yeah.
So like, if you look at like an EY and a Deloitte, they'll come in and they'll basically try to sell a bunch of services, right?
Okay.
Like they get inside like, hey, you kind of have this weakness, you need to do this, and this, but it's very hard to visualize that when you're not seeing someone penetrating your network, right? It feels like someone trying to sell you a car, right, with a bad engine or something. Like you're trying to sell me a bunch of stuff that I really don't need. Like, hey, buy this, buy this, buy this. And when, we're really trying to, we partner with some of the bigger companies, CrowdStrike, Proofpoint. Again, being in the industry, I've been able to see a lot of the good solutions, or solutions I believe in, I should say. Mm-hmm. So when we go in and we meet with some of these people and these companies, I wanted them to get things that I feel like can really help them, right? Like I really care about, I want to put good solutions out there, provide a good service. So that's what we're looking to do. And you have to do that. You have to show people something. You have to show them where they're vulnerable, how that can be fixed. And that's what we're looking to do, as well as provide them with solutions that can really help them in the future so that they, their business can continue, right? I don't have the statistic here, but it's something like 65 to 70% of small businesses shut down due to cybersecurity attacks, right? They just cannot survive them, especially ransomware, things like that. The number is astronomical, and don't hold me to that number, but it's it's above 60% range.
Yeah, I won't hold you to the exact number, but it just made me, I mean, that's honestly something that we don't even think about.
Right.
As like when you're just starting out,
right.
You're like, okay, hey, I need to get my business formation.
Right.
I need to get like insurance. I need to get staffing, all that stuff. And like cybersecurity is like the last thing I think a lot of people think about. So
yeah, I mean, think about it. If you're a small business and you're starting up and you took a loan to start your small business, $50,000-$60,000, and you're just trying to make it, trying to get out there and get started. First couple of years, any small business is expected to take a loss. Imagine you get hit with ransomware, or you're subject to breach, and you're not even prepared for that. And you took a loan to get this business started. You can't survive that. You're going to start all over, take another $50,000 loan, and you may held hostage, or you're going to go take a loan to pay $100,000 ransomware.
Yeah.
Because, these guys, they're not forgiving. I mean, you can't go to them and say, well, I can only afford $20,000. Like, okay, well, on to the next person. Have a nice day. And we're going to put all your stuff on the dark web too.
That's foul.
Yeah.
That's
dirty. It's a very dirty game.
That's real dirty.
Yeah.
Man, okay. So, man, you got like your career, your 9 to 5 is like, you're on the upward trajectory. You're doing things. You're in leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Why, jump into the world of entrepreneurship where it's like, you already got 2 jobs. I'm joking, and then you got stuff. You got a life, and everything like that. So, what made you really decide? There's a gap, and I really need to tackle this. Why?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because my wife's Ethiopian, right? So, and they truly believe in like owning your own business. So she, she's always been an entrepreneur, and she's like, this stuff. Why don't you try to do your own thing and see how it goes? You actually care about like some of the customers. And I actually had a friend of mine, a really, really close friend of mine. His name is JT Summers. He has one of the largest PI firms here in the Atlanta area. And he was always pushing me. He's like, man, I'm getting these calls every day from people saying that they're being exposed to cyber attacks. I don't have the cyber expertise to handle this. He was like, you really should like consider doing something like this. There's nobody out here that's really doing anything like that, especially minority owned businesses, cybersecurity businesses. They're very hard to find.
Yeah.
And eventually it just kind of, he he wore on me, right? I mean, he kind of kept knocking on the door, and then I started thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? Like, let's just see what happens, right? When I reached out to Truist, I said, can I do it? And they said, sure. You're not competing against any of our customers. We're a bank, right? So, as long as you still do your job, we don't care what you're doing at nighttime.
That's wild, but that's a blessing, man.
It
I'm
is a
glad
blessing.
that they're like, 'cause especially like at your position,
Right.
it's like we don't want you like
Correct.
representing a different brand or like
Correct.
anything like that. But that's amazing. Do you see Truist as a potential customer, and maybe who is the ideal customer for you?
So I want to look more into like probably some of the government agencies and some of the medical, pharmaceuticals, attorneys, law firms, companies, and again, also helping some of the small companies. But I want to get to a point where I'm able to do that, be able to reduce price down really low so we can help some of the small mom and pop shops, because those are the ones that really suffer. Truist will be fine. Some of these bigger companies, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, just picking on banks right now, they get hit. You have the reputational damage, right? But people have a short memory. They have the finances to kind of be able to recover. But it truly is a small mom and pop shops that are operating right now that are really, really struggling. So we hope to get to a point where we'll be able to offer, especially for minority-owned businesses. I want to be able to educate and offer services to them at a really, really reduced cost.
Okay, I like that, man. That's it. Best of luck. How can people, if they want to, inquire about your services and everything, how can they find you and everything?
Yeah, so we're on LinkedIn, also cirquettech.com. I got the website up and going. Also have all social media, on Instagram. So it's Cirquette Tech Security. So Cirquette, SERKET -tech, TECH, and then security, common spelling. And actually, I did a trip. So I recently graduated from Georgia Tech with my MBA in technology, and we did our international trip to South Africa, and then took a personal trip up to Egypt. That kind of inspires some of the name, because Serket is a famous Egyptian goddess. So kind of took some inspiration from my trip to kind of come back and incorporate that into the name of the company. So we're really excited. I think I got a really good team trying to give some opportunities to some Black tech and minority entrepreneurs out there, and minorities in tech, to kind of expand their horizons and do some other different things. But we got a lot of people working for us, a lot of pen testers. I mean, black, white, purple, it doesn't matter. But we're just excited to be kind of one of the few minority-owned cybersecurity firms in the city of Atlanta operating in what is becoming very quickly a tech hub here in Atlanta, a premier tech hub for the country.
Nice, man. I'm excited for you, man. It seems like it's a big opportunity.
Yeah.
I know the defense contracting game is like, there's a lot of opportunities there, and I'm assuming both, not only here, but definitely in DC. And so I'm excited about the potential and what you guys can do there. How long you been in the cybersecurity world for?
Yeah, so about 10 years. I've been about 10 years in the cybersecurity realm, and different roles. So when I first started off with Truist, I was doing data protection. So I helped build out the data protection team for then SunTrust. Then got promoted and became a BISO, which is a business information security officer. And I was aligned to the enterprise data office. So we partnered with the chief data officer there, getting a lot of experience with respect to data, right?
Yeah.
How to manage data, how to protect data. Then built the insider threat program, as we talked about for Truist. That's another hot kind of arena right now with respect to large corporations and companies. There's a lot of theft of intellectual property occurring, especially with a lot of layoffs going on right now. So people are taking things. And then from there, Truist was looking to build out their resiliency program. And they asked me, hey, would you be willing to do that? And, help us build out a resiliency program. And I'm a glutton for punishment, man. I like building stuff. So
I see. You're like, hey, we need to start up a new division. You're like, okay, I'll do that. I got you right here. And your wife's looking at you like, what is wrong with you?
She's looking, why aren't you building your own thing? Yeah.
No, but that's interesting. And then you caught my attention with the insider threat, and then it's specifically the intellectual property theft there. Like, that's something that falls underneath like the cybersecurity realm, like where it's like employees taking like trade secrets, or maybe there's a patent or something like that, and you're going off and like, infringing on it. Y'all do that as well?
We do. So it depends on the business. So you'll see sometimes insider threat fall maybe under legal, sometimes it's under corporate investigations, and sometimes it's under cyber. And so for our particular situation, it fell under cyber because of the applications we were using and the funding. Right. So it made sense for it to sit in that cyberspace, because there's a lot of, think of insider threat as preventative, right? It's kind of analyzing behavior trends, what people are doing. Hey, why is Drew scanning his badge in this area that he doesn't have access to? Why is Drew working at 3:00 in the morning when his rest of his group works from 9 to 5? Why is Drew in the office on Saturdays? All these kind of raise a risk score, right? All these kind of trigger a behavior that's not the norm.
I'm breaking it down like that. Watching badge access.
Yeah, because it's an interesting time, man. I mean, like, people are so focused on the outside threats, they don't really realize like a lot of the bigger threats are lay within your own company.
That makes a lot of sense. I remember, man, I was probably 17. They essentially in high school they taught us about like stocks and investing and economics and business. And the biggest thing that always stuck out was like shrink. And so shrink is theft from stores. And
Hmm.
so he was like retail stores, and he broke down the percentages. I think it was like over 50% of shrink was attributed to employees that worked at the company. So while people were worried about somebody coming in and putting something in a bag and walking out with it, the bigger concern was somebody that maybe is working in the loading dock, and they got access to all the clothes before they even got security tags on
Sure.
them. Or maybe it's the person that's putting the security tags on the clothes, and he's maybe putting the clothes to a certain spot and telling his homeboy to pick them up. So it's like it's all kinds of stuff like from an insider threat. Now that you're saying it, that
100%. I mean, think about it in terms of, so a lot of people don't realize, so CSX is one of our big train companies here. And
okay,
they transport, people don't realize a lot of things are transported still by train. I mean, laptops, Nike, Jordans, all that stuff. So
oh
there
wow,
was a lot of theft going on in the city of Atlanta where these trains, these cargo trains were getting broken into. So you got to think that's an insider, right? That's someone tipping off somebody saying, hey, there's a train load coming, right? Of a lot of
yeah,
laptops or J's coming through, at this time. It's going to be in Atlanta at 3:45 a.m. and it's scheduled to leave at 5, and hey man, like the hood was rocking. Everybody had J's on.
everybody was eating.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, but I mean, those are the type of things that you have to identify because those are the losses, right? That's the shrink that you were talking about when you're losing that amount of merchandise. Listen, I mean, Nike is a billion-dollar corporation, but when you're losing that amount of money to theft, it hurts. I mean, and
yeah,
that loss is passed on to us because when we go in and legitimately purchase things, they're raising the price. I mean, think about how much cheaper it would be if you went to Walmart if their theft wasn't in like the billions. I mean, the theft at Walmart is like astronomical, right? And that
yeah.
that theft, those savings get passed on to you and I when we go in and actually go and buy stuff and use our credit card or debit card to actually legitimately pay for things.
That's a great point. Yeah, and I know Target they had like a whole press release or whatever about like the impact of theft and like
Yeah.
how it was. I think they were either increasing the prices or changing. They were doing
Yeah,
something in
I mean,
terms of
it's just even inconvenience, right? I mean, like
yeah,
checkout stuff, right? Like, I mean, you got to sit there and you got to somebody watching over you. You got to go show your receipt. So, I mean, it's some people find it funny when they see on TV or on Instagram in the hood everybody wearing J's, but at the end of the day, that's hurting us, right? For the people who legitimately go in and buy things, we're paying. They're gonna get their money, right? They're gonna
exactly.
make up for what they lost. So, I guess who's gonna be paying for
You and
it?
I.
You got it.
You and I,
You got it.
man. Okay, so you've been doing cybersecurity for like 10 years, man. That's so 10 years. Some people may be like, oh, that's a long time, but like for where you've gone, I know you. I looked at your LinkedIn profile and I saw you started in the Department of Justice before transitioning, but like to go from like just starting off to like head of resiliency, head of insider threat, all of that, building these different programs, like that's pretty good, fast paced trajectory. What do you think kind of helped you ascend so quickly?
So there were a couple things, right? We were going through a merger. They were looking to build out their cybersecurity program. SunTrust was at the time. Would take a step back before the merger,
Hmm.
and the opportunity was there, right? So they were looking to develop talent. I had a previous career. I was coming into my second career. They were looking to develop talent. I came in, took advantage of it, leveraged some of my skills, and rapidly started moving up the ladder, right? But you have to be willing to learn. I had someone that really, really helped me along the way. That was my mentor. Her name was Deanne Emhoff. She was a cybersecurity expert. And I just really put my feet to the pavement, and just kind of learned. I soaked in everything that I could learn from her, and then took that, right? Every time you can learn something from anybody. I mean, when you're sitting back then, this is pre-COVID, when everybody's in the office, you're just surrounded by cybersecurity professionals. Don't be afraid to go talk to people. What you'll find in cybersecurity is that there's a lot of smart people, but there's a lot of people. Typically, when you have very, very smart cyber people, there's sometimes when they were growing up, they were in front of computers all day. The social skills aren't there. So when you have this, you're losing there, right? So
Hmm.
if you can find a person that has both, right, that skill set and the social skills, right, that's when you'll see that elevation increase because there's a lack of that. I feel like sometimes in corporate cybersecurity, people who are willing to write, people who are not afraid to get in front of people to talk, to share their knowledge. Because no matter what you have in your head, if you can't express it and share it, nobody's going to know it's there.
Yeah. And I'm not gonna lie. So I asked that question, but I felt like just from talking to you and picking up on how good of a communicator you are, that was one of the things that like separated you from others. Because to your point, a lot of technical people are traditionally like introverted, like yo, let me work in the corner. I was starting off definitely like that the same way, and then over time through mentors, advice, and just learning and observing, like okay, the people that's moving are not always the people that's necessarily like the best of the best of the
The
best.
smartest.
They're smart,
Right.
but they're not maybe creme de la creme.
Correct.
But they're smart and they know how to communicate. And they can tell a story. They can connect the dots and develop a solution and communicate. Why business may want to go with solution A over solution B and how the financially impacts and everything else. So I think like the communication aspect is definitely something that's very important. That's often overlooked.
100%. Another thing I'll share with your guest here is don't get frustrated, right? And don't try to be a master of all. Find some things that you really enjoy, because people come to me and they say, Dante, I want to get into cybersecurity. And I'll say, great, what do you want to do in cybersecurity? And then they'll be like the deer in headlights, right? Because there's a lot of components to cybersecurity, right? Like, do you want to be a data expert, data protection expert? Do you want to get into pen testing? Do you want to be in, different, there's all kind of things. There's literally all kind of things you can do within cybersecurity. So I try to tell people, vulnerability management, find something that you like. Encryption, right? Do you like encryption? There's some abstract ideas out there that a lot of people can't do, and maybe you can master, and then you'll be able to write your own ticket, because it's tough right now in the industry. There's been a lot of layoffs, a lot of company layoffs, a lot of companies hired a lot during the pandemic, and they were trying to trim the fat now. So you have a lot of talent on the bench. So you have to, if you want to get into cybersecurity, especially if you're young right now, you're looking to graduate with a cybersecurity degree, you got to make sure you're carving out your niche, right? You got to make sure that you know exactly what you want to do and how you're going to get in, because if you don't, you're going to be sitting on the bench, because there's people with 20 years experience, 15 years experience, senior engineers that are salivating that need to work. They have responsibility. They have a house, mortgage. I mean, you see it on LinkedIn all the time. Hey, mortgages due. Please, anything,
Yeah, I do see those posts. I'm not a big fan of them. But I understand, like, you're desperate. Like, yo, I got a mortgage, I got a wife and 2 kids. It's like, yo, I got to eat.
Right.
Like, I got to make sure everybody, and I'm the only one working.
Right.
So it's like, it's me or nothing.
Right.
So how are we going to make this work?
They typically don't work, those posts. And, you got to hustle, man. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to find a way, because it's on you. At the end of the day, it's going to be on you to make it happen,
Yeah. And to that point, like, the preferred alternative, the reason why I don't like it, I prefer people, like, focus on, like, branding yourself a certain way online. Like, give your input on a recent data breach, give your input on what you would do differently, and like build your brand online that way, try to stand out that way, versus, just like not doing anything online, not building a brand, not building your network, and then throwing a Hail Mary like, hey, somebody help me. I think if you take the alternative approach and let people know like who you are, what your input and your opinion is, I think that can kind of serve you better. But
that's a good point. I mean, that's something that people I don't think they really think about it in those terms. But what you're saying is make yourself marketable, show your skill set, and people will acknowledge that. And you can, there's a lot of ways through social media right now to make money and to advertise. It's free advertisement, right?
Exactly.
I mean, there's a lot of ways to promote yourself and your skill set out there. And a lot of people are on LinkedIn, a lot of people are on social media, and they're watching.
Yeah, for sure. So, man, I like that advice. Hone in on your craft, specialize in something. I like that versus like the jack of all trades, which I have seen, especially when you're just starting out. You don't know, like you said, to your point, you don't know where to start. So you're kind of just testing the water. So I think digging deeper, really defining, okay, hey, what do I want to specialize in? What do I want to go after? You mentioned talking to people, communicating, picking their brain, asking them about different concepts and things of that nature.
Find a mentor. That's a big thing. Reach out to someone on LinkedIn. Don't be scared. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. I mean, what's the worst can happen? They can decline your invite, or they can tell you no. I have so many people reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm telling you, Drew, like I try to. That's how we met. That's how we met, right? I make it my business. Like if it's legit, I'll tell you. Listen, it might take me 2 weeks, but we'll have a conversation. Like I will make time to talk to you. Because I've reached out to people and I know that frustration where it's like they're like, oh, I'm too busy or whatever. And like, I just try to make sure that I try to be available within reason, right? I mean, everybody's busy, but if you can wait a couple weeks or, let's talk, let's figure out where it's at,
I love that. I mean, it's like 7 billion people in this world, right? So, I mean, if somebody says no, don't, get hurt over it. Just move on to the next one. You got plenty of people to reach out to, plenty of opportunities there.
Don't take it personal. You can't take anything personal in the business world. You got to have real hard skin. I mean, because you won't survive, especially in the corporate world. The corporate arena that's just what it is, right? And it's about results. And especially in cybersecurity, you have to be prepared for that, because if something bad happens and you're in leadership, it's going to be you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're paying you to, and it's not a matter of, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, like with respect to a cyber attack, right? So, I mean, when you're a big company or corporation, somebody's going to make a run at you. So you just want to minimize the damage, because that's all you can really do. But if you have a bad data breach, I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with what's going on with CISOs right now, but these guys are getting indicted, right? For
Mm.
hiding things, right?
Okay, yeah. Man, that's wild. So that puts even more stress and pressure on you guys, right? Like,
Right. No, it is. I mean, and it's a lot of stress on CISOs right now. If you want to
yeah,
be, at the top, and there's a lot that comes with that. And reporting is a big thing. Compliance is a big thing, especially when you're in the financial sector. You
yeah,
want to make sure that, you're talking to your people are doing their jobs, people are reporting up to you because it's a real funny time right now. I mean, the laws are very kind of loose. I mean, there's some laws that are coming over from Europe and some laws in California right now with respect to privacy and data and client information. And you just want to make sure that you're being compliant with these laws because at the end of the day, when something bad happens and the spotlight's on you, you're going to be the one left holding the bag.
man, that's powerful. And I mean, everything is so interconnected. Like we're such a global economy where it's like you have to be up to date on the laws, not just here, but like you said, in Europe and everything else. If you're doing business over there, you may have some issues over there as well. So
100%. And what you don't want is like, you want to be ahead of the game anyway because you don't want to be caught off guard, right? Because you
yeah,
don't want to be trying to plan things, because, hey, these laws have changed, they're here. You should know about those things, 6 months to a year in advance so that you're already
yeah,
prepping, planning for it. Because the worst thing to do is be in the middle of trying to build something or you're working because corporate cybersecurity or cybersecurity in general is constant. I mean, it's
mm,
just, you're constantly, I mean, technology is constant. It's constantly changing. It's constantly evolving. You have to stay on top of it. So if you're sitting there, right, and you're waiting for something to happen and you're in the middle of trying to do other things and constantly upgrading applications, you're going to be in a bad spot. It's going to be a spot you don't want
gotcha.
to be in.
But no, you mentioned a lot of good like advice for people. Talked about finding a mentor and everything. I guess situationally or like hypothetically, let's say somebody came to you, and this may happen already on LinkedIn. Let's say somebody came to you, they like, Dante, man, I saw you make the pivot from Department of Justice or criminal justice into cybersecurity. Look, I'm desperate. I want to get into cyber. What should I be studying? What role should I be going after? How much money can I expect to make? Like, kind of give me the rundown there. What would you kind of advise them?
So again, kind of like what we touched on earlier is know what you want to do, right? Because, there's a lot of ways you can spend money here on education, right? I mean, there's a lot of boot camps and a lot of certifications. And I'm glad you brought that point up because one thing I would tell people is be very strategic about the certs that you get. Because, I've interviewed people and they have 50 certifications in cyber. And then you start talking to them and you run them through scenarios and they can't answer any of the questions because they
Mm,
don't have the on hand experience. Nothing beats experience in anything in life. Nothing beats experience, right? Let the education complement the experience. So now you have to have something to be able to get the experience. Someone's going to have to take a chance on you, right? So you have to be able to show that academically you can follow things, right? Like you can digest information, you can understand information. And typically that's what a degree tells someone or a certain certification. Like if I see someone has their CISSP, which is kind of the gold standard for
hmm
cybersecurity, that tells me they know cybersecurity, right? From an academic standpoint, they have a basics, they have a base level understanding of several different disciplines within cybersecurity. So that's the gold standard. But there's also other certs you can get out there that, don't require as much time, right? And that will allow you to get your foot in the door. And then once you get in their foot in the door, it goes back to what we were talking about, being able to sell yourself, being able to have that social engagement, being able to show that person that's interviewing you, hey, there's something there. Like,
Yeah.
I've interviewed 20 people, but there's something shining on this guy that I want to like. He's hungry, like he's receptive, like he's something special. You gotta have something to separate yourself from everyone else. So, that's kind of the golden rule. And, again, you want to have that fundamental basis. So I went to, again, I think I mentioned earlier, Georgia Tech. They have a great MBA program. Give them a plug here. Go Jackets. They have a great technology program. They also have a cybersecurity boot camp.
Mm,
So that will give you some baseline knowledge and you can complement that with some certs. But I would just tell anybody, just be very careful about do your homework on the cert. Don't just go out throwing a bunch of money around. You can spend a lot of money taking classes. This stuff isn't cheap, right? Especially if you're trying to break into the industry. And also, hey, get a job that might pay for some of this stuff, right? If you can find a way to get in and see, if you want to do a pivot, maybe you're in a job right now in a role, they offer training, maybe they're a little flexible on the training you can take. Can you leverage that to maybe take some cybersecurity courses? Find ways to make it happen for yourself.
I like that, especially the last one of you let your employer fund it. And there's all kinds of stuff. I worked at previous employers where actually all my previous employers they would pay for an MBA if I wanted that. They'd pay for a master's in engineering if I wanted to get a different one. So I mean, I think that's a great starting point. I know, especially if you're in retail, it may be a little bit harder, but there still may be some opportunities like that. Like Starbucks, for example. I know they were like one of the first companies maybe a decade ago that did like a partnership with like Arizona State
Hmm.
University where you could learn different things for like a discounted price or do tuition reimbursement. So, I mean, definitely look into that. Don't discount. I only work at
Right.
Chick-fil-A or only work
Right.
at some other retail or whatever company. There may be opportunities there.
Yeah, especially your platform is minority security. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there for us. I mean, a lot of opportunity out there for us. If you gotta look, right? You gotta
For
dig.
sure.
You gotta ask. You gotta put yourself out there. I would also advise people to engage in the cybersecurity community. There's a lot of events, free events that there's a organization here called Tag. They're having a mega event here. Hey, it may cost you $100 to buy a ticket, but go in there, network. You never know who you'll meet. You never know who will take a chance on you. Go to different events, employer events. You'd be surprised that how people don't take advantage of some of the free stuff that's out there to offer because they just don't think about it. Like
Yeah.
they just don't think about it. Go on Reddit. Go on. Do Google searches, find out what's going on in your local area from a cybersecurity standpoint or just a cyber standpoint to see, where you may be able to just take advantage of some free opportunities.
Yeah. No, I like that, especially the events one, man. Like so NSB, NSBE, for those watching who don't know it, but National Society of Black Engineers, we had like 20,000 engineers, both from collegiate on up to working professionals that came to Atlanta this week for the conference here. And you have employers in every industry, every sector. You had Reddit, you had oil and gas companies from Schlumberger, Halliburton, BP, Chevron, Exxon.
Mm-hmm.
You had biomedical companies there. And a lot of these companies are doing interviews on site. Like pull up, meet somebody, do your elevator pitch, have your resume ready to go, and like you can get an interview on site. And so that's not the only conference that's like that. So I think, again, going back to the point earlier where like the introvert in you may be like, I don't want to go out here and talk to nobody. Let me just, perfect my craft. You do need to be like a keyboard warrior, like be a good practitioner, but the soft skills, the people skills is what's going to like help you get in the door. Right.
100%. And also don't sleep on volunteering. So I'm a board member. I'm a board member at Aspire to You. And, a lot of times you can
Aspire to You.
Yeah. So they're closing the digital gap here in Atlanta area between families and communities of lower income. So they provide laptops, computers, education for some lower income communities. So doing some really, really excellent work in the community, especially our community with respect to cyber skills. And, you can volunteer and you never know who you're going to meet. That's the thing I keep telling people. I'm like, you just never know who you're going to be in front of and you won't even be looking for it. Right. Like, I mean, if you go in with the right heart, right, and the right frame of mind, like I really do, I'm going there not necessarily for myself, but because I do want to help and learn.
Mm-hmm.
Like you never know who you'll get in front of, right, and who'll see you just volunteering or who you'll meet. It might not even be somebody seeing you. You just might connect with somebody, and they may say, "Hey, I know this person that you need to talk to." It might not be me, but it might be 2-3 layers down of someone that I know that might give you an opportunity that you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, so we coming up towards the end. I just want to ask you a couple more questions real quick, man. Like I mentioned earlier, so native Houstonian, fellow Houstonian.
H-Town representing right here.
I appreciate you representing the A, man. I appreciate it. You make us look good, but you went to Sam Houston State with Bearcat. You studied criminal justice, right?
Yeah, I have a master's in criminal justice management. Did undergrad and grad school at Sam Houston State in criminal justice, and then of course, did the pivot as I've gotten older, and then went to Georgia Tech here and got my MBA in technology. So,
gotcha.
You don't have to start at a major school, some big, huge university. I mean, the whole university, that's a whole nother podcast. We could talk about that game from an education standpoint and what you're paying for. But, again, as we talked about with certs, make sure your return on investment is appropriate.
So with the MBA, was it worth it for you, like pursuing it? Or what was the biggest thing you were looking for? Was it the network? Was it because the stuff. You've been doing it 10 years.
But you can always learn.
That's true.
You can always learn, right? So I definitely learned. I mean, and also the professors at Tech are world class. So I learned a lot. The networking is huge. Being part of that global Georgia Tech community, because that's what you do get at a bigger school. You get that global network, right? So Georgia Tech has that global network. It was very strategic. So Truist paid for it. They paid for my MBA. I wanted to go to a school that had a global network, and I wanted to be very strategic about what I was doing.
That's a win all the way around, man.
Yeah.
A win is a win.
Yeah,
so, I mean, they paid for it. You get the network. You get to, advance your knowledge in it. So that's good. But going back to your time at the DOJ, what do you think helped you pivot from,
doing different things? And at that time, with respect to investigations when I was there,
So you were like a police officer or like...
I was an agent.
An agent for the Department of Justice.
Yeah,
okay.
so the cyber component of it was starting to hit criminal activity, right? They were really starting to use email, drafts, things like that to kind of leverage some of their skills. A lot of these guys were pivoting from drug dealing, going into scams, very complex scamming that involved cyber and things of that nature. You could see where things are going. And again, that goes back to our original conversation of, don't stay stagnant, right? So, evaluate the environment, evaluate what's going on. Always be thinking 2-3 steps ahead of what your next move is going to be, because, cyber's changing, cyber's evolving, right? Like, AI is going to replace some jobs, right? So, a lot of companies right now, they look at AI and think it can be otherworldly. Like it'll never completely replace everyone. So, you have to start thinking about in terms of where you are in your role. Are you in an operational role? Will this role be around in 5 years? Is AI going to replace my role? And if that answer is possibly yes, again, talking to other people, evaluating your own circumstances, you might want to start looking across the way at pen testing, or if you want to stay in cyber, another discipline, right? To ensure that you have a job, right? And that you're always, I used to tell my team, if we can leave, if we can be gone for 2 weeks and nobody knows we're gone, then that's a problem. Right. That's a problem. Right. So you have to make yourself needed. Right. And like you want people to wonder, where's Dante at today?
That's great life advice, business advice.
Or call, wait a minute. We need to talk to Dante about this. Well, Dante's not so that means somebody's missing me. Right. Or that means somebody's missing my team. That means I'm valuable. If you're not valuable, when it's layoff time, that's what they're going to start going down the list and saying, who's this guy? Like, who's this person? Like, yeah. Okay.
Hey, man, that's a perfect point. Because it's so many people. So many roles. I don't want to say people. There's so many roles that I'm like, what would they even do? I know they're in the same company, but like, do we even do anything?
Trimming the fat.
Yeah.
Right? And you're seeing that now. And unfortunately, sometimes when the fat's being trimmed and there's major layoffs, good people get caught up in those layoffs, right?
Yeah.
People who are valuable, who don't speak up, people don't know. Again, there's some value in creating a brand for yourself within a company, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be an entrepreneurship. It can be, you want people to know who you are within your own company, because that creates value. You're like, oh, wait a minute, like Dante's excellent. Like, let's ask him about this other role that we have for him. Or, Drew's really good at what he does. I bet he can do some other things too. Yeah. Get to know people. Make sure people know who you are.
Good stuff. I love that. Hey, last question, rapid fire, 30-second response. What are some like technical skills? Like, cyber is different from software engineering. But are there any technical skills or softwares that people should be looking at learning if they're looking to get into cybersecurity?
Yeah. So I'll say this real quick. Make sure like whatever you're doing, like coding and things, those are the things I have concerns about with AI. Like, people who are like in the coding, those are things that AI may possibly replace in the near future.
Yeah.
But look at things that are kind of abstract: encryption, pen testing. Those are kind of data protection. I mean, those are things that will always be around that can't be essentially replaced with AI, quantum computing right now, right? So you got to think of things in cybersecurity in terms of 5 to 10 year layers, right?
Gotcha.
So just keep evolving. But that's what I would kind of recommend, software development, things like that. Man, those are like really tricky things right now, because I think AI is coming to gobble some of that stuff up,
Gotcha.
and the market's just flooded with people that have been laid off. And that's another thing you have to look at, right? Like, where's the market at? Who's been laid off? Where's my opportunity lie? Who am I competing against for that next role?
Nice. Hey, man, I love it. I enjoyed the conversation, man. I really appreciate you taking out time to meet with me.
Yeah.
Man, very personable. Like, you can capture an audience for sure.
Yeah, man. Well, this is a link. This is a definition of a LinkedIn social media connection. My brother here, Drew, who reached out to me on LinkedIn. We had a conversation. He's like, hey, let's do this. I'm flying to Atlanta. Let's do it. Let's meet. And this is what happens when two people socially engage. And next thing you know, you're sitting in a chair together and you're sharing knowledge globally with the world, right?
Exactly. Now Dante's about to hire me as his VP of
which job?
Nah, I'm messing with you. But nah, man, it's been real, man. That's a lot of fun, and I appreciate all the wisdom and the insight and everything. We'd love to have you come back on, maybe 6 months or whatever,
Absolutely.
check in, see how things are going with the business. By that point, you guys have racked up millions of dollars in, government awards, and
well, whatever I can do to help, I'm always glad to help.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, man.
Man.
Hey, y'all subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff. I appreciate y'all staying tuned. Peace.